The rain poured steadily over Seoul, streaking across the neon glow of the city. Inside the glass walls of a luxurious office tower, Seo Jun, CEO of one of Korea's most prestigious conglomerates, stood before a floor-to-ceiling window. His gaze was sharp, his jaw clenched, as if the storm outside mirrored the storm within him. 3 years ago, his father's company had collapsed under mysterious circumstances. Betrayal, corruption, and whispers of international manipulation haunted the family name. He had rebuilt the empire from the ashes, but revenge burned in his chest like an untamed fire, and her name was written in the ashes of his father's downfall. Amelia Carter, an American woman with a reputation for brilliance in corporate law, had recently arrived in Seoul. She was fearless, disarmingly beautiful with her auburn hair and piercing green eyes, and infamous for her ruthless victories in courtrooms across New York. To many, she was a star. To Seo Jun, she was the daughter of the man who orchestrated his family's ruin. He had tracked her for months, waiting for the right moment. When he finally saw her at a lavish charity gala, the sight of her laughing freely among Seoul's elite made his fists clench. Amelia noticed him too, a magnetic stranger with dark eyes that seemed to pierce right through her. Their gazes locked, an invisible thread tying them together across the glittering ballroom. What she didn't know was that she had just become the centerpiece of Seo Jun's carefully crafted plan. What he didn't expect was the strange, unexplainable pull in his chest when she smiled at him. That night, when he asked her for a dance, she agreed with a hint of curiosity. Neither of them could have guessed that the music they began moving to would carry them into a dangerous game, one of hate, passion, and a love neither of them had intended. The orchestra swelled as Seo Jun extended his hand, his expression unreadable. Amelia hesitated for a heartbeat, studying the stranger who had appeared at her side with such quiet command. His tailored black suit clung to his broad shoulders, his confidence effortless, yet his eyes carried a depth that unsettled her. "May I?" he asked, his voice low, rich, with an accent that caressed her name when he said it for the first time. "Amelia." She placed her hand in his, warmth spreading through her fingers. The contact was brief, polite, but it sent a current through her veins. As they moved onto the dance floor, she realized everyone was watching them. 2 striking figures circling each other, their steps perfectly matched as though rehearsed. She felt her pulse quicken, her breath shallow. "So," she said lightly, breaking the silence, "do I know you?" "Not yet," Seo Jun replied, lips curving faintly. "But you will." She arched a brow, intrigued but cautious. He was dangerous, not in the obvious sense, but in the way he seemed to know more than he should. Something about the intensity in his gaze told her he had sought her out. Seo Jun, on the other hand, struggled to keep his composure. Every detail about her, the confident tilt of her chin, the easy grace with which she carried herself, clashed violently with the image of the enemy he had built in his mind. She wasn't cold or calculating like her father. She was radiant, but he reminded himself, beauty was often the sharpest weapon. "You seem familiar," Amelia pressed, narrowing her eyes. "Perhaps," Seo Jun said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Perhaps it's destiny." The word lingered between them like smoke. When the music ended, he bowed slightly, his hand still around hers a moment too long. "I'll be seeing you, Amelia Carter," he said, before disappearing into the crowd. Her heart raced. She didn't know whether to feel intrigued or unsettled. What she didn't realize was that she had just stepped into a web woven long before she set foot in Seoul. And Seo Jun, for all his careful planning, didn't realize how dangerous it was to already feel the faintest tug of desire for the woman he intended to destroy. Amelia's heels clicked against the marble floor of her hotel lobby the next morning. She carried a folder tucked under her arm, filled with documents for the legal negotiations that had brought her to Seoul. A new corporate deal, delicate and high stakes, one that could shape her career even further. But her thoughts kept circling back to him. The man from the gala. She hadn't even caught his full name. Only that intense gaze, the cryptic words, the strange feeling that he knew her. It bothered her more than she wanted to admit. As she checked her phone, A notification flashed across the screen. Meeting rescheduled. Location, CO Group Tower. Her heart skipped. She'd heard of CO Group, one of Korea's largest conglomerates, rebuilt in record time after a devastating collapse years ago. The story fascinated the business world, but she had never imagined she'd be stepping into the very heart of it. When she arrived, the glass tower seemed to pierce the sky, gleaming with both modern ambition and quiet menace. She rode the elevator to the top floor, rehearsing her usual armor of professionalism. The doors opened, and there he was, Seo Jun. He sat at the head of a long, polished table, perfectly composed, as though he had been waiting for her. His dark eyes flicked to her, calm yet piercing, and for a moment, time stilled. "Miss Carter," he said smoothly, rising to his feet. "Welcome to CO Group." Amelia froze. So this was who he was, not just a stranger from a ballroom, but the CEO of the very company her firm was working with. "Mr. CEO," she replied, regaining her composure with a practiced smile. A surprise. Their handshake was brief, businesslike, but beneath the surface, both felt the tension. For him, it was the beginning of the revenge he had plotted so carefully. For her, it was the realization that the mysterious stranger had just become her most important ally, or perhaps her most dangerous opponent. Neither showed their true cards. Not yet. The meeting room gleamed with sterile perfection. Polished wood, glass walls overlooking Seoul's skyline, and a silence heavy enough to demand respect. Amelia set her folder on the table, her professional smile unwavering, though her mind ticked furiously. Seo Jun sat across from her, perfectly poised. He didn't look at the documents spread before him. He only looked at her. Amelia cleared her throat, breaking the tension. "CO Group's expansion proposal is ambitious," she began. "If executed correctly, it could open doors internationally. But your current contracts, they leave certain liabilities exposed." He tilted his head, amused by her directness. "You don't waste time with pleasantries, Miss Carter." "I didn't come here to waste time," she countered. The faintest smile curved his lips, though his eyes remained calculating. She intrigued him. Most people bent under the weight of his presence. Amelia held her ground as though she had nothing to fear. He admired it, even as it fed the quiet anger inside him, that this woman carried the name of the family he despised. As the discussion deepened, their voices wove between tension and cooperation. She was sharp, quick-witted, refusing to be outmaneuvered. He, in turn, offered counterpoints with a calm authority that tested her patience. By the end of the hour, Amelia closed her folder with a sigh, conceding just enough to give him the upper hand. For now. "You're not easy to negotiate with, Mr. Seo." "That's a compliment coming from you," he replied smoothly. Their eyes met again, and the air between them thickened, no longer strictly professional. Something unspoken lingered, curiosity, challenge, a dangerous spark neither wanted to name. As Amelia left the room, Seo Jun leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. The first move had been made. He had let her glimpse his charm, his authority, but never his intent. Revenge was best served slowly, and Amelia Carter had just stepped willingly into his world. Amelia's second week in Seoul unfolded in a blur of boardrooms, late-night document reviews, and endless negotiations. CO Group's legal teams were skilled, but it was their CEO who made every meeting feel like a duel. Every time she thought she had found leverage, Seo Jun dismantled her argument with calm precision. He never raised his voice, never showed impatience. Yet his presence filled the room, commanding attention without effort. One morning, after 3 hours of back and forth over contract clauses, Amelia leaned back in her chair, narrowing her eyes. "You do realize," she said, "that your strategy is deliberately stalling progress?" Seo Jun's expression remained perfectly composed. "Patience, Miss Carter. Rushing leads to mistakes. Or to lost opportunities." Their eyes locked across the polished table. Neither blinked. Neither yielded. Around them, junior lawyers scribbled nervously, pretending not to notice the current crackling between the two leaders. Finally, Seo-jun allowed the faintest smirk. Tell me, Miss Carter, do you approach all your cases like this? With fire and stubbornness. I approach them to win, she shot back. He studied her, intrigued despite himself. Her determination reminded him of his younger self, before betrayal had hardened him. That recognition unsettled him, but he buried it quickly. When the meeting adjourned, Amelia gathered her papers, brushing past him with professional grace. Yet as she reached the door, he spoke again. Dinner. She stopped, glancing over her shoulder. Excuse me? Business dinner, he clarified smoothly, though his eyes hinted at something more. You and I. No lawyers. Just strategy. Her pulse quickened, though she masked it with a cool smile. And if I say no? Seo-jun's gaze lingered, unreadable. Then I'll simply assume you're afraid. The challenge hung in the air. Amelia's lips curved slightly, almost amused. 7 o'clock. Don't be late. As she left, Seo-jun's smirk faded into a darker expression. Every step she took closer to him was another step deeper into his carefully laid trap. But for the first time, he wondered if the trap might also be closing around him. The boardroom was stifling with tension, though the air conditioning hummed at full strength. Papers scattered across the table, charts projected on the screen, and every executive's gaze flicked nervously between their CEO and the American lawyer who refused to back down. Amelia leaned forward, tapping a paragraph highlighted in the draft contract. This clause, she said firmly, is a liability. If the deal expands into the U.S. market, your competitors will exploit it within months. The executives shifted uncomfortably. It was true, they knew it, but no one dared voice agreement before Seo-jun. He sat perfectly still, fingers steepled beneath his chin. We're not removing it. Amelia's green eyes narrowed. Then you're deliberately putting your company at risk. A sharp silence cut through the room. One of the junior lawyers dropped his pen. Seo-jun finally rose from his chair, the quiet scrape of it against the floor making every head turn. He walked slowly around the table, his gaze never leaving Amelia's. When he stopped beside her, the distance between them shrank to something dangerously intimate for a professional setting. Do you always presume to know what's best for your clients? He asked softly, though the steel beneath his words was unmistakable. Amelia refused to look away. When my clients are making mistakes, yes. His lips curved faintly, but his eyes stayed cold. Mistakes, Miss Carter, or risks you don't understand? For a heartbeat, neither moved. The room was frozen in the tension between them. Her pulse hammered, but her voice stayed steady. Both. Seo-jun straightened, turning his gaze briefly to his executives. We'll revise the clause. Shock rippled across the table. Amelia blinked, masking her surprise with professional calm. He had yielded, at least publicly. But she knew better. This wasn't victory. This was a warning. As the meeting concluded, Seo-jun leaned close to her, his voice low enough for only her to hear. You're bold, he murmured. But don't confuse boldness with control. Amelia met his gaze, a spark of challenge in her eyes. Then I suppose we'll see who has it. Their standoff ended only when she walked out, her heels striking against the floor like defiant echoes. Behind her, Seo-jun's mask slipped for the briefest moment. She was more dangerous than he had anticipated. Not because of her last name, but because she made him feel alive in ways he hadn't allowed himself in years. And that was the most dangerous risk of all. The restaurant Seo-jun had chosen overlooked the Han River, its glass walls glowing with soft amber light. Elegant, discreet, and impossibly expensive. The kind of place where business deals were sealed and secrets whispered behind crystal glasses of wine. Amelia arrived precisely at 7, her black dress simple but striking. She carried herself with the same poise she wore in the boardroom, but there was something sharper in her eyes, curiosity, and perhaps a hint of caution. Seo-jun stood as she approached, immaculate in a tailored suit that seemed designed to disarm. You're punctual, he said. I don't like wasting time, she replied smoothly, sliding into her seat. The waiter poured wine, leaving them alone in the golden glow of the table's candle. For a moment, neither spoke. It wasn't awkward, it was charged, like the silence before thunder. Amelia broke it first. You've built an empire in a very short time. Most CEOs would call that impossible. Most CEOs, CEO June replied, swirling his glass, lack imagination. She tilted her head, studying him. Or they lack whatever drives you so fiercely. His gaze flicked to her, sharp and unreadable. She was too close to the truth. What drives me, he said evenly, is none of your concern. Then why invite me to dinner? She countered. The faintest smirk touched his lips. To see how you play when the rules change. Their conversation moved like a duel cloaked in civility. She probed his strategies, his vision for CEO Group's expansion. He countered with questions about her firm, her career, her relentless ambition. But beneath the business talk, another layer pulsed. Challenge, intrigue, and something neither wanted to name. At one point, Amelia laughed, a sound that caught him off guard. You're not nearly as cold as you pretend to be, Mr. CEO. CEO June leaned forward slightly, his voice low, almost dangerous. And you're not nearly as untouchable as you think, Miss Carter. For a heartbeat, the air between them felt electric, the line between rival and something far more fragile threatening to blur. The waiter returned with their entrees, breaking the spell. Both sat back, masks slipping back into place. But when the night ended and Amelia stepped into the cool soul air, her thoughts churned. She should have seen him only as an opponent. Instead, she couldn't shake the way his gaze had lingered on her, as though he knew her better than she knew herself. And CEO June, watching her leave from the restaurant's doorway, clenched his jaw. Every step deeper into his plan was supposed to bring him closer to revenge. Instead, it was bringing him dangerously close to something else. The next morning, Amelia walked into CEO Group Tower with her usual crisp stride, her coffee in one hand, a folder of contracts in the other. She had slept little, not because of work, but because her mind replayed fragments of the dinner. His voice, the way he leaned forward, the charged silence that had stretched between them like a taut wire. She hated that she remembered. When she entered the boardroom, the atmosphere was different. Whispers hushed as executives exchanged knowing glances. CEO June was already there, standing by the window, the sole skyline casting light across his sharp profile. He didn't turn when she walked in, but she felt his awareness of her instantly, like a current humming in the air. Miss Carter, he said smoothly, finally facing her. I trust you enjoyed dinner. The room shifted. Every pair of eyes flicked between them, curiosity masked behind polite expressions. Amelia forced a professional smile. It was productive, she said, settling into her seat. If her colleagues thought anything else of it, they kept it to themselves. But she could sense their curiosity, their quiet speculation. The powerful CEO and the foreign lawyer. It was a story they were already writing in their minds. As the meeting began, Amelia focused on the contracts, but CEO June's presence tugged at her attention like gravity. He challenged her points more sharply than usual, his tone cool, his gaze steady. She met every attack head-on, her voice firm, her smile never faltering. Yet beneath the professional sparring, something else simmered. Each exchange felt sharper, each rebuttal heavier. When their eyes locked, it was as though no one else existed in the room. By the end of the session, Amelia was exhausted. Not from the work, but from the constant tug-of-war between them. She gathered her papers quickly, eager to escape the unspoken tension. But as she reached the door, CEO June's voice followed her, quiet but deliberate. Miss Carter. She turned, brows arched. His expression was unreadable, his tone deceptively polite. Next time, perhaps we should keep business dinners purely about business. Her pulse jumped, though she forced her smile to stay in place. That depends, Mr. CEO, she said lightly, on whether you can keep it that way. A flicker of something dark, amusement, frustration, maybe both, crossed his eyes. Then the mask returned, smooth and controlled. As Amelia left, The boardroom buzzed faintly with speculation, and Seo Jun, standing perfectly still by the table, reminded himself that every glance, every word, was part of the game he had designed. But deep inside, he knew the game was no longer his alone to control. The morning headlines hit Seoul like a thunderclap. Seo Group expansion plans leaked to competitor. Amelia stood frozen in the lobby of her hotel, the newspaper trembling slightly in her hand. It wasn't possible. The clause revisions, the confidential proposals, all of it was still under heavy negotiation. Yet there it was, plastered across the business section for the world to see. By the time she arrived at Seo Group Tower, chaos reigned. Executives whispered in clusters, phones buzzed without pause, and the normally composed offices felt like a storm had ripped through them. When Amelia entered the top floor conference, Seo Jun was already there, eyes dark as steel. He didn't speak immediately, but the weight of his gaze pressed down on her harder than any accusation. "Miss Carter," he said finally, his voice controlled but razor-sharp. "Our negotiations have been compromised." She set her folder on the table, meeting his eyes without flinching. "I had nothing to do with this. I didn't say you did." His tone was cold, but his gaze lingered on her a second longer than necessary, as if daring her to break. Amelia straightened. "Then you should know this kind of leak benefits only one party, your competitors. And if they got access to confidential drafts, it means someone inside Seo Group is selling information." Murmurs rippled through the executives in the room, but Seo Jun silenced them with a look. His attention returned to Amelia, sharp and calculating. "You're suggesting a traitor." "I'm suggesting you need my help," she countered. "Because whoever's behind this didn't just put your company at risk. They jeopardized my reputation, too." For the first time, his composure cracked just slightly, the corner of his mouth tightening, his fingers curling against the polished table. She was right. After a long pause, he spoke. "Very well. We investigate together." Quietly, the executives exchanged uneasy glances, but no one dared argue. As the room emptied, Amelia gathered her notes, her mind already racing through possibilities. She felt Seo Jun's presence beside her before he spoke again. His voice lower, meant only for her. "Be careful, Miss Carter. Whoever did this isn't afraid of playing dirty." She looked up at him, meeting the intensity of his gaze. "Neither am I." For the briefest moment, something unspoken flickered between them. Not trust, not yet, but the recognition that they were about to step onto the same side of the battlefield. And for Seo Jun, that was far more dangerous than any rival company. The elevator doors slid shut, leaving only Amelia and Seo Jun inside. The air between them was tense, heavy with everything left unsaid. He pressed the button for the restricted executive floor, the level where the company's most confidential files were kept. "This is where we start," he said, his tone clipped. Amelia crossed her arms. "You're assuming the leak came from someone with high clearance." His gaze cut to her, sharp. "I don't assume. I know." The elevator chimed, and they stepped into a sleek, dimly lit hallway lined with locked glass offices. Amelia followed him into the archive room, where rows of digital terminals glowed faintly. Seo Jun's fingers moved swiftly over the keyboard, pulling up logs of who had accessed the contract drafts. Amelia leaned closer, her green eyes scanning the data as it appeared. Their shoulders nearly touched, the faint brush of proximity sending an unwelcome shiver through her spine. "There," she said, pointing to a name that appeared at an odd hour. "That employee accessed restricted files at 2 in the morning. That's not normal." Seo Jun's eyes narrowed. "Department head. Loyal. Or so I thought." "Loyalty bends when money talks," Amelia murmured. Her words lingered. He glanced at her, and for a heartbeat, the fire in his gaze wasn't anger. It was recognition. They both knew betrayal intimately. Episode 1 ends here. Find out more in episode 2 coming up soon. Thank you for watching. If you like the story, please leave a comment. Also subscribe, like, share, and turn on the notification bell so that you will get notified whenever a new story comes up.